Slug FPV, aka Slow Lazy Old Guy, a long-time multi-rotor pilot, started building 3D printed DIY type drones about 6 years ago, with APM 2.6 controllers. That was back when it took you about 3 months to build something and about another 2 months to get it up in the air and actually flying. So things have changed a lot since then. I then moved into videography type drones like 3DR Robotics, Unique, and DJI. About 6 months ago I got bored with that and started getting interested in micro FPV drones, as well as 2.5 inch, 3 inch, and 5 inch racing FPV drones. So I've been hooked on it ever since. So this is my after the box is open review of the URUAF. I've had this particular quad for about 5 weeks now. So hopefully you can learn from what I've learned, my mistakes, which I make a lot of them. So I have a list of do's and don'ts with this little micro drone. So let's go ahead and go over quickly the specs here. It's a 65mm brushless Whoop frame. It has a Crazy Bee flight controller, F3. I did get the FR Sky version. It has 5 amp ESCs in it. The motors that it has on it when it comes is there. It's hard to see on here. Those are SE0603 17,000 kV motors. It does have an all-in-one camera and VTX. It's 25 milliwatt. It does have on-screen display, so you can adjust your PIDs. It also has something that I think is very critical. It just has a small dipole antenna on this thing, so it does have RSSI on it. The thing that it does say that you can control, it says it has VTX control. I could never get that to work properly. It seemed to not be sticky, so one of the first things you're going to have to do, and it describes that in the manual on how to change the settings. It does come from the factory with low band channel 8, which I have a hard time getting with my FPV goggles. It's also, low band isn't something that we're supposed to be using in the US, so that's one thing I would change right off the bat. It does support beta flight, which I really like. So why don't we quickly go over some of the do's. One of the things I was having a problem with is I was getting fail safes. So because the RC antenna kind of just dangles down there. I didn't particularly like that because you can get snagged on things. So I went ahead, and it's hard to see, you can kind of see it here. I routed it up into the canopy here. I didn't even use hot glue. I just kind of just stuck it up underneath there. And you can kind of see it in there. So basically, I just routed it up along the inside of the canopy here. One of the things I was getting was a lot of fail safes, which I don't like. Usually I like the RC connection to be stronger than the video feed. And this, it was actually the opposite. I'd be flying along having a good video feed, then I'd get a fail safe, and that's pretty aggravating. Usually I like it the opposite, because at least if the video starts getting choppy and cutting out, I can fly back within range. So that's one thing I would recommend. It greatly helped it out, having it kind of routed up inside the canopy. The other thing that I recommend doing is I put a small bead of hot glue just on the front leading edge here. Let me see if I can get this in focus. You can kind of see it there. Not a lot, just a little couple of dabs here, and that greatly helps. When I'd hit a wall inside the house, I did knock the camera out. There's just this little L clip on the back of the VTX. That's the only thing that's holding it on, along with this shroud here. So just a little bit of hot glue on this front facing edge here really helped out, and I've whacked this into walls ever since, and it's never popped back out. So the other thing that I would suggest is getting spare parts for this thing. That would be, I would include some spare props, as well as another canopy, and a frame. I think eventually these braces might get weakened, but I don't know. I just think as much abuse as these little things get in the house, if you have carpet, maybe you don't need as many spare parts. I have hardwood floors and ceramic tile, so when I crash, it hits the ground pretty hard. So I would suggest getting some spare parts, and again including some spare motors. These are small micro brushless motors, and they're not the beefiest mechanically, because they're very tiny, so it's not like a 5-inch racing motor, that are a little more solid, and these things are pretty fragile. I did have one motor that seemed to be the bearings were a little rough on it, so I went ahead and did an upgrade to 19K kV motors, the same ones that are on the Happy model Snapper 6. It's the motors I use. You can get those off of Amazon. What I liked about these 19K motors, you get a little more punch, as well as it does a little better on doing some acro flying. You can get those on Amazon. So as far as other dues, I would also recommend that you just use the Betaflight default PIDs. They seem to work fine. When I was playing around with anti-gravity, that seemed to make it really go wonky. So I don't know if I wouldn't, maybe if you turned it way down, anti-gravity, that might help. But I ended up just having to turn it off because I was clear down at 1.5, and it still seemed to be making the copter be a little jittery. So I turned that off, and that seemed to improve things. The other thing that I would say is a don't do is on this battery charger. Make sure you don't leave the battery just connected here. The problem with this is it'll discharge your battery to the point where it doesn't shut off. It just keeps draining the battery, and you'll ruin your battery. And it happened to me, so lesson learned. Just after you've charged your 1S batteries, unplug your XT60 connector here from the battery, your LiPo battery. Otherwise you're going to ruin it. As far as other quirks of this thing, the big one is the VTX. Again, it says you can adjust it. The menus do come up where you can change the channel and band, but it's not sticky, and it didn't seem to really change it. So again, you really have to use a little switch to get it to change to like a F1 type channel and band. So overall, I really like this model. The pros, it's easy to set up and bind. That's not too difficult to do. There's a little button here on the side. I would suggest taking the canopy off to do that, although you can get a set of tweezers in there. I do like the OSD with telemetry. I do like this better than the Happy Model Snapper 7 for indoor flying. The softer plastic frames are more forgiving on walls. So the aluminum frames on the Snapper 7, they can scratch up your wall or a refrigerator or something like that. So this is definitely a lot more forgiving inside. So I would suggest this for indoor flying. Snapper 7 more for outdoor flying. This thing will fly outside. I do like taking it outside, on calm days. I do like that it has this adjustable camera angle. You can get it to about, I don't know, probably 15, close to 20 degrees maybe. So I do like that aspect of it. It does fly more like a larger brushless quad than, let's say, a brushed tiny whoop class quad. So if you're into something that feels more like a 5-inch racer, and it doesn't really, but it feels a lot closer to that than, let's say, the brushed 65 millimeter whoop type quads. So from that aspect, if you're wanting to learn acro, I think it's a good little unit to have. The cons, of course, like I've already covered, receiver has limited range. The spare parts are hard to find right now because it's a popular model. I don't think it's quite as stable as the Snapper 7, and that's because the frame isn't as stiff, and the Snapper 7 is a bigger quad, and you know it has a carbon fiber frame with aluminum shrouds. So with that, you know, I definitely give this, you know, thumbs up. So I'll go ahead and show you a quick video of how this thing flies. You can fly it fairly aggressive, which I like. So catch you guys later.